Runners are starting to understand that they need to stay strong, but many runners don't have access to a gym or just don't want to go to a gym. And I get it. So today we're going to go through a killer workout routine that you can do at home to get great strong legs. That's going to help you as a runner, but it's also just going to help you as a human. I always say runners are humans too, and we all need to stay strong, particularly into later life. The goals of this particular style of training are to get you strong and to help you build a little bit of muscle. I see lots of things out there where there's running specific strength training programs, and there are lots of weird and wonderful fancy movements, but at the same time, some of those people aren't just getting strong and they're doing those fancy exercises with a light weight, whereas this is going to get you strong with some fundamental movements. Once you've built this routine, if you then want to go off and do some fancy and weird and wonderful accessory exercises, I do some of those too, then that's fine, but let's get you strong first, and that's where these movements will come in. First up, there are two principles of strength training that I want to go through to help you understand, and these principles also highlight some of the struggles you might have with training at home, so understanding them first is important. The first is the concept of RPE, relative perceived exertion, which is the fancy sports science way of saying how hard do I think I'm working out of 10. For something to be strength training, to get strong and to build some muscle, we really want to be working to an RPE of 9 out of 10, meaning I don't think I can do many more reps, 1 or 2 reps maximum. I'm working really hard, that's 9 out of 10 RPE. And we want that to land somewhere between 8 to 20 reps so that we can get strong and build muscle. What that means is if you can't even get to 8 reps, the weight is too heavy, but if you can do way more than 20, the weight is too light and you're not really going to be getting the benefits you're aiming for. In a gym, this is really easy to achieve because you just pick up the next dumbbell or you put the pin in the weight stack where you need it to be. But at home, if you don't have lots of equipment, this is hard. So we're going to run through a few strategies to help you with this concept of RPE. The other concept is that of progressive overload, which means that really each week you're going to be trying to get a little bit stronger, make it a little bit harder. This doesn't happen every week because sometimes you're tired and life gets busy, or you're actually planning a deload week where you deliberately go lighter, which is good to do every now and then. But ideally, you're going to be making progress over time. Again, in a gym, this is super easy. You just move the pin in the weight stack or you pick up the heavier dumbbell. But at home, again, we need to come up with some different strategies to make this possible. I wanted to bring up these points first because it highlights the importance of maybe having the right kit. You might need to purchase a couple of bits if you know you're going to be training at home exclusively, but it also shows the mindset you need. Sometimes I see runners who train at home, they kind of get stuck in their ways a little bit. They just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And eventually what happens is your nervous system gets used to that and it stops being the strength stimulus that it once was. So we need to be thinking about trying to get heavier, trying to get stronger, trying to get progressive in our training. So onto kit. A quick disclaimer. I actually don't train at home that much. I prefer to train in the gym for all the reasons I just highlighted. I like gyms, I've got one close to my work, it's nice and easy for me. I can get my training done better in a gym. So the kit that I'm using today is actually pretty minimal. The kit that I do have that I'd highly recommend you get is something called a slant wedge. I got these on Amazon for about £20. They're going to come in super handy for 2 of the exercises, which I'll show you in a little while. And the other piece of kit that would be helpful is some of those adjustable dumbbells. I don't have those, I'm just going to use a couple of kettlebells instead, but adjustable dumbbells would be really handy. They tend to come in weight categories, so minimum, maximum weights. I would recommend going for a heavier set of these adjustable dumbbells. The reason for that is if you need lighter weights than what the minimum weight is, you can buy individual weights cheaply and they're small so they don't take loads of space. However, for some of our leg exercises, our leg muscles are really strong. So going to some of the heavier weights like 30 kilograms or 40 kilograms for your legs with certain movement patterns isn't actually that much. So to have a whole set of heavier dumbbells in these adjustable ones would be handy. And then if you need any really light weights, then you can just buy those individually. What I also find about light weights is you don't need every increment. Having like a 3 kilogram and a 7 kilogram does most of what you need for the light stuff. But when you're going up heavier weight, you only really want to be adding a little bit when you're using that progressive overload principle. So that's why I'd have the heavier adjustable dumbbells if I knew I was going to be training at home exclusively. Before this workout, we're going to do a good warm up using functional movement patterns. The idea is that you need to raise your body temperature to the point where if you were wearing a jumper, you'd want to take it off. So you actually need to be physically warm before you go on and do your weightlifting. You also want your joints to feel freer and your muscles to feel awake. So what I do is I pick 3 movements. This might be something like the knees over toes split squat, the Cossack squat, and a deep squat. And then I'll just keep rotating those 3 movements until my joints feel looser, my muscles feel waken up, and I feel physically warm. How many rounds I need to do of these movements depends on things like, am I cold when I begin? So I might need to do more in the winter, for example. Or how beaten up are my legs from my running and my other training. If I'm particularly tight after my long run day or sprint sessions, then I'm going to do a few more rounds of these before I start doing heavy weightlifting. Okay, let's get into the session. So we're going to pick 4 exercises. We're going to do 3 sets of each. The first 2 sets are going to be warm-up sets where you're going to do, say, an RPE of 5 out of 10 for the first set, 7 out of 10 for the second set. So you're getting a bit heavier now. And then the final set is the one where you go to 9 out of 10 RPE. That should be feeling really hard. And that should land somewhere between 8 to 20 reps on that final set. Rest between sets needs to be as little as possible, but as much as you need. So I like to get people to pay attention to how they feel in their body. You want to have your heart rate settled back down. You don't want to be out of breath before you do your next set. And you also want to feel like your muscles are ready to go again. But at the same time, as soon as those 3 things are happening, your heart rate's down, you're not out of breath, and your muscles feel ready to go again, you don't need to take any more rest. There's no point hanging around for no good reason. So you'll find that different movement patterns require more or less rest. So after, say, for example, heavy squats, you get really out of breath, and that's going to take you a while to feel like you're ready to go again, maybe even up to 2 or 3 minutes rest between sets. But after, say, calf raises, you don't need as much rest, you can feel ready to go quite quickly. The first exercise we're going to do is deep squats. To help achieve this with safe posture, I use slant wedges. This raises the heel above the toes and just helps your squatting posture stay good. The idea is you're going to keep your spine neutral. If you're holding a weight in front of your body in, say, a goblet position, or holding dumbbells in the front rack position with them in front of your shoulders, what I say there is imagine holding a pencil between your shoulder blades with a 1 out of 10 effort. That's just going to engage the shoulder blade muscles, stop the weights pulling you forwards, and it will help keep your upper back neutral. To start the movement, push your butt back so that it initiates the squat and go as low as you can in a pain-free way. So obviously don't push through pain, but we're really trying to go as low as we can pain-free, and going all the way to the bottom if you can really helps your knee and hip health, and it puts a really good eccentric load through all of the muscle groups. A mistake I made for a long time, and a mistake I see some people make, is when they push up in the squat, their butt moves first. So that makes them hinge forwards and overstresses the back. You really want your butt and your shoulders to be moving up at the same pace. So the cue that someone gave me that really helped me was, imagine someone's pulling you up by the scruff of the t-shirt. That helps you keep your front of your chest driving up while your butt is pushing up, and keeps the two moving at the same pace. Next, we're going to move into a hip hinge movement, the single leg RDL. With an RDL, what we're going to do is the starting position involves a slight bend in the knee, but from that point on, the knee isn't going to move that much. So the knee is staying relatively still, and that really focuses the movement as a pure hip hinge. I have about 90 to 95% of my body weight on that front leg, and the back leg really is just there for balance. It's just a toe touch for balance. We want to keep our back nice and straight, and what I think about really is just pushing my butt backwards, and that creates the hip hinge. I push my butt back while keeping my knee straight, and I go as far as I can while getting to about 8 out of 10 stretch in the hamstring. You don't want to go to a maximum stretch, that's going to bring a little bit more risk, but 8 out of 10 stretch is good. Pause for 1 second at the bottom. The pause gives 2 benefits. It's going to give a good eccentric load to the hamstring, but also it gives you a second to concentrate. What I want you to think about is, rather than pull yourself back up using your back muscles, I want you to push yourself back up by pushing that front foot to the center of the earth. Push that front foot into the floor, or push the world away. And what you'll feel when you push that front foot to the center of the earth is that it's your hamstrings and glutes that help you push back to an upright position, and not your lower back muscles. That's what we're aiming for. To really get this movement dialed in and make sure you're using your hamstrings rather than your back muscles, start with just body weight, and as soon as you feel confident and comfortable in this exercise, start to add load. If you're using dumbbells, hold 1 dumbbell either side of the front leg, and if you're holding one weight, hold it in the opposite hand, and if you're holding kettlebells, you can hold it in 2 hands. Before we get on to the final 2 exercises, a quick note from today's video sponsor, 10,000. When I'm thinking about working with brands, I follow Derek Sivers' rule of, it's either a hell yes or a no. And when 10,000 got in touch, it was absolutely a hell yes. I've followed 10,000 for a while now. I love their minimal, clean design, cool looks. But what I found in wearing them is they are super comfortable. I'm wearing the interval short here, and the liner is the most comfortable liner I've worn in any short. It also has all the usual features that you'd want in a pair of shorts, which is a phone holder, a bigger pocket, a key holder, but they look good and they feel good. The lightweight t-shirt I've got here is very high end and feels comfortable in running and weightlifting, everything you'd want in the t-shirt. 10,000 have over 36,000 5-star reviews. So if you're looking to upgrade your training gear, you can use my 15% discount code to get 15% off your entire order. And you can find that at tenthousand.cc/CB15. Next up in our routine is the Bulgarian split squat. I always like to have a unilateral exercise in my leg strength routines, and I find that helps us, particularly as runners. It takes a little bit of experimentation to find the right distance between your front and your back leg, and you just want your back leg up on a step or a chair or a bench. And the goal is to go as low as you can while not feeling any pain in your knees or your back. I like to slightly twist in the direction of the front leg. Now I do that by pulling my outside hand back a little bit. And what this does is it increases the hip internal rotation on that side, and that helps to load the glute more. You're trying to keep your back as upright as you can during this process as well. And similar to the RDL, you want to push up by really forcing that front foot into the center of the earth. Push the world away with that front foot to help you push up without overloading your back muscles. And finally, as runners, it's really important to have some lower leg strength, so we're just going to do the simple calf raise. You get bonus points here if you do it with a deficit, meaning your ball of your foot is higher than your heel. So do it on the edge of a step. Start with just 2 feet, and when you can get to about 20 reps nice and easily, go to single leg. When you can get to 20 reps nice and easily, start to add some load and just hold a weight behind the leg on that same side. Building your calf strength is really important to obviously help things like Achilles tendonitis, but it can also help prevent things like plantar fasciitis, and even going up the chain, it can help knee and hip health too. So they are the 4 exercises, but I spoke before about some of the struggles you might have lifting at home compared to in a gym. The struggles that you might have around finding the right weight for RPE and being able to progressively overload over time. In a gym, super easy. You just change the weight you're lifting, or you put the pin in a different part of the weight stack and everything's fine. How do you do that at home if you haven't got a big selection of weights? Well, if you think about it, the weight we're lifting is only one lever we can pull to make something easier or harder. There are other things we can do as well. So you might want to play around with the speed that you're lifting. For example, lifting weights slower makes it harder. So if you're getting to say 20 reps with a certain weight and you want to make it harder, but you don't have the next weight or the next weight.
3 days later.
We got halfway through editing and realized that my microphone ran out of battery for this final piece. What I was going to say is where in the gym we use weights, either lighter weights or heavier weights, to get the right level of training for you. At home, once you start to reach the limit of one particular weight, say you can get to 20 reps relatively easily, rather than have to pick a different weight, what you could do is you could slow down the speed. That's going to make it much harder. Or you could increase range of motion. So when you're doing slow reps, that's going to make it harder, and that's going to reduce the amount of over reps you could do. So that will be a form of progressive overload. Or you could do things like put your front foot in the Bulgarian split squat. You could put that on a step and then go much lower in the repetition. So that would be increasing your range of motion. That makes the rep harder. Or you could go deeper in your squat, things like that. So increasing range of motion, slowing down your speed, that's a way to introduce progressive overload without actually changing the weight you're using. So it reduces the amount of weights you need to have at home. It's also important to note that in this video, I haven't covered the upper body. Well, I always say runners are humans too, and we need upper body strength. So you can broadly think of that as we need to push things and we need to pull things. At home, you could do things like push-ups as you push, or take some of your weights and do overhead pressing, like shoulder pressing. That can be your push movements. Pulling is harder. My favorite pull is the pull-up, and I do lots of those in the gym. So you could attach a pull-up bar at home if you know you're going to be exclusively training at home. That might be a worthy investment. Or you can do things like bent over dumbbell rows. You can actually go quite heavy with the bent over dumbbell row. It's quite a strong movement where you're using big muscle groups, so you're probably going to need bigger weights, or just go slow and use big range of motion like I said just now. But even as runners, don't neglect your upper body. If you do have access to a gym and you want to see how I modify this style of training in a gym environment, have a watch of this video here. And until next time, happy training.